The hour of 7 o'clock having arrived, I'm going to call the council to order. Let the roll reflect that all council members are present and a quorum has been established. As we begin our meeting tonight, we're going to have a very special proclamation and a presentation of his badge to retiring Police Lieutenant Joe Kegley. I'll call on the chief to start things out, and then we'll have the city council read a proclamation. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Your Honor, Council. It gives me great pleasure tonight to acknowledge the work of Lieutenant Kegley over the last 30 years with the City of Hastings. As I told some people today, this is kind of a bittersweet departure with Joe. He's touched a lot of people in law enforcement. Just in the short time that I've been here, I feel like I've known Joe 30 years. So, and I think anybody in this room would agree with me that he's just that kind of guy. Joe is a jack of all trades. We kid about what he does for the department, but you can ask Joe what happened his first day at work. You can ask him what happened in his 15th year, 16th year. He'll tell you the names, faces, locations, and what they were charged with. So that's phenomenal. It's a phenomenal characteristic in a police officer. So I said he's our historian. He's a mechanic. You'll find Joe, as everybody knows, in my office. You'll find Joe under the hood of a car anytime something can't be quite figured out. When our building manager or building maintenance person is out, he knows how to get the generator started and get the boiler started in the middle of winter if things aren't going quite right. When our tornado sirens aren't working, Joe knows who to call and how to get them fixed. So. And I also, he helps fumigate the building about every day with Jesse's spinach meals. As the new folks know, as that aroma goes through the hallway and our front staff, we go, oh, that Jesse made spinach again. So we always kid him about that. So, but in all seriousness, I do want to thank Joe for his tireless commitment. Recognize and honor his family. He couldn't have made it for the last 30 years without you. There's no doubt that he's missed several family events. There have been some long nights. Joe has worked long hours. He worked long hours in the time that I've known him. As I said, it takes a special person to live the life of a cop, and especially today, as challenging as it is. As you ease into your retirement, Joe, you'll still look at people in a different way, see life through a different lens, like we all do. But just know that the friendships and camaraderie you've experienced there's no other like it, and you'll never find anything like it in the world in this profession. For all that you've endured, the Hastings Police Department, City of Hastings, and its citizens are indebted to you, and we thank you for your service. And Mr. Mayor and Council, go ahead with the proclamation, please.
Joe, I've been on the city council, I think, 27 years now, so I've been there for the large portion of your career.
Been here a while.
And I certainly understand when the chief says the jack of all trades. That's certainly true, but I didn't know about the boilers. That's pretty impressive there.
Tell everybody it's a union thing.
Yeah. I didn't hear anything. Why don't we begin with Councilmember Brock, and we're going to read the proclamation that's dedicated to Joe here tonight.
Whereas Lieutenant Joe Kegley has served the Hastings community and the police department since 1987, and
whereas during his tenure, Joe Kegley has served as in many capacities supporting the interests of the City of Hastings and its police department, including but not limited to patrol officer, drug task force, investigator, sergeant, lieutenant, and interim police chief, and
whereas, while a Hastings police officer, Lieutenant Kegley has served the community with honor and dignity, and
whereas Lieutenant Kegley has been a leader within the Hastings Police Department and our community, acting in a professional and respectful manner, seeking to promote accountability, pride, and service, and
whereas Lieutenant Kegley has demonstrated the willingness to work hard and lead by example, while earning the respect of his peers and those he leads on the Hastings Police Department, and
Whereas Joe Kegley has chosen to retire on July 21st, 2017, after serving over 30 years of professional law enforcement service to the state of Minnesota, Dakota, and Washington counties, and the city of Hastings.
Now therefore, be it resolved by the Hastings City Council on this 10th day of July, 2017, that Joe Kegley is hereby recognized and thanked for his dedicated service to the city of Hastings and the Hastings Police Department. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Joe, I just want to say briefly on behalf of the citizens of our community, you know, the chief's right, it takes a special person to be a police officer, especially in these times, and the dedication that you've shown, not just to your department and your coworkers, which is a great deal, but to the citizens of this community, the average person out there, the average Joe, if you say. And you meant a lot to him out there. I've heard great reports of your work throughout your years, and your dedication to the department, but to the people of this city is recognized tonight too, and you will be missed. So thank you for all you've done.
Thank you.
Okay, and please say a few words, and then we're going to get a picture because we probably
gotta do a
like a
picture.
photo op. We want
We gotta do a picture. First of all, Mayor and Council, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it. It's been really an honor to be recognized here. And, you know, I'd like to thank my family. They are really the support that you need. My wife, Jessie, yeah, her cooking's done well for me. But no, it has been a pleasure, and it's fun working with the group of people that the city council has brought on board to work with. They're very dedicated. The people that are in this whole emergency system with our fire, our ambulance, and the police, they work well together. They work well for the council. They work well for the citizens of Hastings. And I just want to thank them for 30 years of truly fun and enjoyment. That I've had a great time doing it. It's you come out with a few bumps and bruises, and nothing a little psychology can't take care of, but it'll be fine. And I just want to thank the people that I've worked with here. It's a great group. They work hard. They're dedicated. And thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Yeah, that's fun.
So at this time, I want to present Joe with his badge, which is tradition in police service. And actually, we're retiring his badge because as we restructured now, it's the last lieutenant's badge in the department. So Joe will be the last to wear that and to carry it on. So this says, Lieutenant Joe Kegley, in recognition of your outstanding service to the Hastings Police Department, July 1st, 1987 to July 21st, 2017. Congratulations.
Thanks, Chief.
Can I have the chaplain say it, please?
Just one quick thing, though. There's my sister back here, Peggy. It's her 50th birthday today. She should probably stand up. Probably stand up.
How you doing? Hey, I would like to, I'm the chaplain, and I tell you what, I remember when he started, he was a lot younger. But you know, what's wonderful is over the years, I've had the privilege to work with all the officers, and Joe being one of those very special officers, as you all well know. Worked with them on many occasions, but I'll tell you, every time Joe showed up, everything calmed down. He has just a great demeanor. He's been such a public servant. He has served well, and we appreciate you. And I'd like to just say a word of prayer for him. Father, I thank you for Joe. I thank you for all that you've done in and through him to make a difference in the lives of all those that he served throughout all these years. Lord, I just pray that you be with him and his family, that you just protect him and keep him safe. And Lord, might his retirement be just as joyous. In Jesus' name, amen. All right,
Thank you.
And just a quick announcement, as we leave here now, we've got cake and refreshments upstairs, and welcome the council up there afterwards as well. Thank you.
Also, if we come down for a photo, and Joe and Chief, please join the photo as well. Jesse, why don't you join us? Okay, next, council, we have the minutes before us of the regular city council meeting of June 19, 2017. Is there any additions or corrections to the minutes of that meeting? Councilmember Brox.
I do have an amendment only to someone's name who spoke at the hearing on the predatory offender ordinance. She's listed as Cheryl Hallberg, but her name is Shala, which is Shaula. That's the only correction I'd like to make. And I only know that because she's my neighbor.
Okay, that correction is duly noted. Okay, any other corrections, additions? Okay, with that exception, then they'll be accepted. The minutes are accepted. Council items to be considered. Council, is there any further items to be considered? Seeing none, consent agenda. Council, what's your wish? Councilmember Balsanic makes motion to approve. Councilmember Fulch? Okay, we'll make that number 18 on, we'll take that under administration as number 3. Okay? Okay, we have the consent agenda. I need a second. Okay. Councilmember Leifold seconds that. We have the consent agenda before us as amended with the number 18 put on the administration portion of the meeting. Is there a discussion to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. Next, council, we have before us is a resolution of a public hearing, the expansion of the Onion Grill Sidewalk Cafe license with the liquor license amendment. John, will you be introducing that, or?
Oh, I can just
Okay. Okay, Julie, we'll have you.
Mayor and council members, council is requested to conduct a public hearing to consider a sidewalk cafe and liquor license amendment for the Onion Grill. They're requesting to expand their seating from 2 tables to 6 tables, and staff is supportive of the request.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to open up the public hearing. Public hearing is now open for the expansion of the Onion Grill Sidewalk Cafe license. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak to that particular issue? Anyone here want to speak to that particular issue? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Council, let's go to that particular item of business, and what's your wish? Councilmember Lund, did you want to make a statement?
Yes, as this is a family business, I'm going to abstain for potential conflict of interest, Your Honor.
Okay, your abstention is noted. Councilmember Vaughn. Councilmember Vaughn makes a motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Balsanic. That motion is now before the body. Is there further discussion to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. Next, we have a resolution before the City Council, site plan, Kempstone Building Expansion. John, welcome to the meeting. Very glad to have you here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. I will put up shortly a map of the property that we're looking at today and turn the map right off again. Let's see. There we go. The project that we have today is a site plan approval for a small expansion to Semstone. Semstone is located just east of Highway 61 Vermillion Street and south of 21st Street in this location here. What they're proposing to do is to put a 1,000 square foot addition onto this warehouse garage space right here. This is a building right now that's about 3,100 square feet. The Planning Commission did review this at their last meeting, did approve the vote on a 6-0 tally. There was not much discussion at the meeting, and no one spoke for or against the item during the discussions as well. So looking at the site itself, this gives a better idea of what the building looks like today. Building is not in good condition. One of the things that they will be doing with this project, and I think they've started already, is to re-side and to re-roof the building itself. So what you're seeing here today will not be representative of what's going to be there in the future. This shows the addition here, which is about 24 feet in length, and this shows a little bit of what the building's going to look like at the end of the day. So I can stand for any questions related to this. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation, John. Appreciate that. Council, this item is before us. What's your wish? Councilmember Balsanic.
John, thank you, Mayor. With this addition, is there anything in terms of landscaping, improvements around the facility and so forth? Because I'm seeing that it is along their property line.
Councilmember, no landscaping additions are required as part of the site plan, and nothing's proposed at this point.
Thank you.
Okay, Council, further discussion? Councilmember, who would like to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Councilmember Vaughn makes a motion to approve, second by Councilmember Fulch. That motion is now before the body. Discussion to that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. Okay, next, we have a special presentation by Craig and Lisa in regards to the Dakota County Broadband Initiative, and I will turn that over to Melanie.
Thank you, Your Honor and Council. Tonight we have two guests, and I will allow them to introduce themselves. But the topic tonight is a collaborative broadband initiative that we have been working on for a number of years with our partners throughout Dakota County. Craig and Lisa have been leads on this project and have been before the council at least one time in 2015, and they have been invited tonight to talk about kind of the totality of the project and maybe next steps. So turn it over to Craig and Lisa. Welcome.
Thank
Welcome
you.
to the meeting. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to start out first. My name is Lisa Alpson. I'm with the Dakota County Community Development Agency. So typically you see us when working with you on a variety of our housing developments that we have in your community, and also with our housing finance tools like with ArtSpace, and then we also have redevelopment incentive grant or RIG grants that we've given to HD Hudson. So you see us in the housing and redevelopment world, but we also have economic development authority powers as well that we got in around 99, 2000. And with that, we've been working with Craig and the cities and the county to kind of look at this broadband effort. And we've been working actively for the last 3 years in studying this in two phases. The first one was in 2014, looking at wanting to work with the cities and counties to answer the question, which is this first bulletin in front of you: could we build an enhanced consolidated network to make government operations more efficient using what we currently have already put in the ground, with all the cities have done independently and the county has done independently? Can we put them together and create what would we call an institutional net or an iNet, so that our systems could work more efficiently and have more redundancy? In addition to that, we asked in this first phase of studies, could we also potentially do we have any other additional capacity in the ground that we could lease to internet service providers or ISPs to be able to provide that for our commercial system or a CNET? And the conclusion from that first study that was done in 2015 said, yes, you have the physical structure to be able to do that. That there is a gap that will probably cost about $3 million or so, but we think it could do it. From there, we decided that we wanted to the cities and the county decided, let's go a little bit deeper of a dive. Let's try to see so we can do this concept, we think, but what is it really gonna cost us? How much is it gonna cost all of our cities to try to get into it? If we wanted to create something new or a joint powers board, what would that look like? What would be the role of all of us? So we got into another study with all the cities contributing and the county and the CDA. In 2016, we started that, and we're calling it the systems plan. And that's really what we're here today to talk to you about, is trying to look at that deeper dive, because now we're to a point where after 3 years of studying this, it is feasible. And we want to come back to all of our cities and look at, this is what it's going to cost us, this is what it's going to look like, this is how it's going to benefit you, and we want to just kind of get into a deeper dive and see what kind of questions, concerns that you may have. So with that, I'm going to give it to Craig, who has been working with us for the last 3 years and has been learning a lot more about this technology than I can do. So he's going to help us out there. So thanks, Craig.
Thank you, Lisa. As Lisa said, my name's Craig Ebling, and I'm an old retired city manager that Lisa asked to come to help to handle the administrative parts of this. Neither Lisa nor I are network engineers, but we know a lot more about broadband than when we started 2 or 3 years ago. Lisa sort of characterized the overall nature of what's being done here. I sometimes call this a poor man's network, because we're not building an entire network as some of our neighboring counties have done. For instance, Scott County did an entire ring and network within the county entirely at county cost several years ago, and that's bearing great fruits, by the way. Carver County has done something similar. In Dakota County, being a very fiscally conservative group, we're trying to use the best of what's already been bought and what's already been paid for. Can we squeeze some more mileage out of that to do good things, first for government, to make sure that our governments are running as well as they can and as safely and with as much assurance of our systems as we can. And then possibly, because we have this investment that has some additional capacity, is it possible for us to aid in economic development? And Lisa called that the CNET. When we were here 2 years ago, we showed an exhibit that's on your screen from the first report. And that's a bit of a generic diagram of a modern broadband network, as it says. And it shows, in general terms, how these things fit together. And it shows a core network with some networks that are off to the side and some distribution fibers, and it shows some co-location facilities. Co-location facilities are sort of the gateway to the rest of the world. So this was kind of the generic thing that we talked about, and we spent a lot of time that evening talking about what part wireless plays in this system, and wireless does play a part in the future, we believe, of telecommunications. As long as we have cell phones and lots of other things that require a wireless kind of communication, there will always be wireless aspects to any network. But we're firmly convinced, as we learned from our consultants, that the fiber optic cable element will always be the most important of the telecommunications networks that serve us. So we started out with this generic sort of an idea of how these things would work. And then we, as Lisa called it, did a deeper dive into saying how would this really apply into the networks that are in our county. This is a schematic diagram of how the iNet would function in the county. And you'll see now that we actually know what that core ring that we saw in the generic version would look like. And it would have 4 nodes, namely the Egan Data Bank, the Northern Service Center of the county, the Western Service Center of the county, and DCTC, Dakota County Technical College. And they would be our anchors, as it were, to make this system very bulletproof and very safe for all governmental uses and very reliable for governmental uses. All of these core nodes, as we call them, can also serve as co-location points, but we believe that our primary co-location point, gateway to the rest of the world, will be at the Egan Data Bank. Egan Data Bank is assuming a very significant regional role. There is a building in downtown Minneapolis called the 511 building, which is the primary gateway for internet traffic in our part of the country into the national and worldwide networks. I hope I'm speaking into the mic good enough here. DataBank has become robust enough to be a significant supplement to the capabilities that are in the 511 building, with about 15 carriers in that facility right now. That's really good news for us and really makes it important for us to utilize that as one of our co-location points, because we then get access to all of those carriers, and we also get access to a supplementary national route that actually goes to Kansas City and Omaha and Dallas, as opposed to Chicago and Seattle. So it's very fortuitous for us to have DataBank and to be able to use it as one of our core nodes. This is a schematic version of what we believe will happen in Dakota County if this project goes forward. This is a more detailed one. Anytime you try to show a county map, it gets really busy. But this is a compilation of existing fiber within the county. And by the way, this is not all of the existing fiber. If you try to show it all, it just gets terribly busy. But one of our tasks in this project was to catalog all of the publicly owned stuff in the county. That was a much bigger job than we ever envisioned. And by the way, that is a part of the work that is not yet finished. However, we do know enough about what exists to be able to know how this system will lie out. This is a blow-up of the system in the Hastings area, and in the inset you'll see that the primary connection for the city will be via the connection that's in the PD building. And you'll also note that the 2 core nodes that will serve Hastings are the Northern Service Center and the Dakota County Technical College. Lisa talked about the concept of making publicly owned assets available for economic development purposes. This is always a sensitive subject, we believe, to policy matters, because We're in a very conservative part of the country, and no one has given us testimony at this point in time that they wanted government to get into the internet business. And this proposal certainly does not propose that. It instead suggests a system that would be open access to the real ISPs in the world, to the real people who provide retail service to our business and hopefully residential customers as we go forward. That is the concept that is being conceived right now and presented for consideration. This again is a schematic of how the CNET system will lay out. And you'll see that we have two core nodes especially dedicated for the CNET, one of which will be at Data Bank and the other would be at Western Service Center. And there will be some commonalities between the two systems, but also enough segregation to assure our potential users that we are what our consultants call carrier class. And I always interpret that to mean that we would be as good as the other network communicators that are out there. So the concept would be that on an even, Steven, whoever wants to use it kind of basis, that we would make this extra capacity that the governments own available to ISPs, with the goal being to provide more reliable, faster, lower cost service to the businesses in the county. There will be a competitive edge to this because when the system is connected, and we have made the connections at that data bank co-location facility in Egan, there will be instantly access to, we estimate, 4 to 5 ISPs. For anyone who can access the system that is close to publicly owned fiber in the county, they would have access to 4 or 5 ISPs to perhaps provide better bids against what they're paying for their internet service. We think that that's a significant potential economic development tool for the county, and to be honest with you, the real reason why the CDA is involved in this project. Real quickly, this is, again, a very busy map that shows a few supplementary routes that will be also included for making the CNET a reality. Anytime you undertake something, there's always what it costs to get into it. When you buy the car, what's it cost? And then what's it cost to operate it once you own the thing? And your representatives, and I publicly thank Melanie and Alan, they've been very deeply involved in all these conversations and have shaped them along the way. But anytime you start to consider this, you really want to know what those costs are going to be. There are initial costs, Lisa called them, I think, the GAP project, that will be involved for the INET, the institutional network for governmental uses, and there will be initial costs, some incremental initial costs for the CNET. The question then always arises, well, who pays how much? From the initial report that we shared with you 2 years ago, getting into a deeper design and more detailed design, the estimate now is about approximately $1.6 million, whereas we were thinking might be 3 or 4. But as we learned more, we found that there were better ways to do it. So the working groups that have been toiling on this came up with some principles about how we would share the first cost for the institutional network. And they came up with several sort of rules or principles that we would use to share the costs that are listed on your overhead. The city members would pay for the cost of the switches, the optics that relate to the switches, and the costs for furnishing a place for that switch to reside. City members would also pay a proportionate share of the additional stuff that needs to get built out there associated with fiber that is no longer than 2,000 feet. 2,000 feet is a bit of an arbitrary number, but it was an attempt to protect some cities. By the way, this wouldn't have necessarily affected Hastings, but to protect some cities from a catastrophic initial cost to join the membership. Well, of course, if we're going to limit those costs, someone else needs to pick them up. And the agency who is proposed to pick up those extra costs is the county. So the rule would be that if a lateral is necessary to serve for institutional purposes, any one of the cities, that the county would pay for anything more than 2,000 feet. Excuse me, more than 2,000 feet of fiber. And additionally, the county would pay for all of the costs of the core node. And we've got a chart on this for a second. You'll see that the county then ends up being a very significant contributor into the initial cost of the system. There's also an initial cost to running the CNET. It's a smaller increment, and it's about $380,000. Excuse me, about $365,000, I think it is. And the systems plan suggests that the Dakota County CDA seriously consider paying that in its entirety. And the reasoning there is that that is totally an economic development initiative, and that is the business of, one of the businesses of the CDA. The systems plan suggests some ways that the CDA might be able to do that, and as the text suggests there, the CDA has got that under consideration right now, and there are several tools that it may use if it agrees to do this. Once we've paid for the system and it's all in place, how do we operate it? The work groups spend an awful lot of time on this as well. And they have a series of distribution ideas, cost distribution ideas, but the general rule for all of them is if the entity, and it's, we believe, going to be some sort of a joint powers agency, if that entity is managing a lot of stuff on your behalf, then you should pay more, proportionately more than your neighbors who have less stuff. It was a bedrock principle of this from day one that the cities would never give up title to what they have spent money on. That was a real sticking point at the beginning, because at one time we said, well, everybody will deed over what they have built and then we'll all operate this in one happy family. And that simply wouldn't fly. From too many, we got that message early on. So the concept now for both the INET and the CNET is that the governmental units would retain title, but they would enter into agreements that authorized the JPA entity on their behalf to operate the system. And then in turn, they would share in the cost to operate that system. And again, the basic rule for how we would share those costs is those who have more stuff that the JPA is operating would pay more money. That involved a very detailed asset inventory, and as I said, that work unfortunately is still not done. But certainly we understand at this point in time that the cities are the smaller players, as it were, for the total amount of assets. The county has hundreds of miles, and our largest city, Egan, has only 62 miles. Most cities may have 5 or 10 miles, and some cities, to be honest with you, have none. So this presented a lot of issues for how we worked out something that is fair to everybody, and we think that we've done the best that can be done. This will be a dynamic thing, because we anticipate that cities will continue to add to the system, as will perhaps the county, although the county's biggest construction projects are done. But there will be additions to the system, and each year that inventory will be redone and the cost redistribution categories will be reestablished, and the cost sharing would be adjusted each and every year depending on how much stuff you're now having the JPA operate. That's the general rule for the annual operating cost. No one has ever devised this idea with the idea that it was going to make the governmental units rich. To the contrary, most governmental operations, or most governmental potential partners that we've talked about said, this is more about keeping our house in order, doing our work for as cheaply and as safely as we can, and then also trying to help our businesses grow. It never was about trying to make money. Now, having said that, our consultants tell us that there will be revenues generated, because when people decide to use this public facility, and by the way, they could be incumbent providers, anybody else who wants to use this system, there will be a cost to those. It's not going to be a cost that's prohibitive, or else no one will use it, and our property owners won't gain the benefits. But there will be costs to use those facilities, and then we'll have some revenue. So how do we share that revenue? And we spent an awful lot of time talking about that too. What's fair about that? And we hit on this concept, which is one of maybe 10 that we considered. The idea is that 45% of any revenue generated would first reside with the city from which that revenue originates. Half of it would be shared by all of the members in proportion to the amount of stuff that you have in the system. So this was important to the county because the county is going to have a bunch of stuff that made this whole system work. So they're saying it's kind of fair that we get some of that revenue too. And then the last thing was what we call a pool, which would be shared by all members in proportion to population. And the concept thinking there is that the very nature of having a county-wide system is of value in and of itself. So 5% would then be shared. We ran into some real issues with 2 of the potential members because we have 2 potential members that do now presently have CNET capabilities, namely Egan and Burnsville. And they had difficulties in that they had borrowed money for some of those assets and were relying on revenue to pay them off. And so that was a real conundrum for us as to how we handle those. And in the end, the solution we had is to say that we will set those aside, those revenues aside, to be retained by those 2 members for a period of 5 years so that they can pay off their debt. Thereafter, they would go into the revenue pool, and also any new revenue that's realized in those 2 cities as of day 1 of the JPA would also go into the revenue pool. It's very difficult to know how much this is going to amount to and how quickly it's going to amount to. But we made some very bald and gross assumptions that I'm going to show you in a second. And please, before you even look at these, remember that this is how realistic they are. I decided them one rainy afternoon, just for demonstration purposes. They are truly only for demonstration purposes to demonstrate how the formula works. Now, I happen to think that they've got some relation to reality, and our consultants believe they do as well. So, having said all that, I'm going to try to keep moving along here. This is a chart that then summarizes, based on the estimates that we have, how all of these spreadsheets and rules and all this arduous work applies to everybody. So you see the $1.6 million capital project on the far left, the INET GAP project, we sometimes call that, or the initial INET project. Of the $1.6 million, the county pays approximately $1.1 million. And then the balance of it is spread out by those rules that we reviewed before. In the case of Hastings, a contribution of $25,773 would be proposed. A lot of that relates to the switch and the stuff that goes with the switch. Operationally, we believe that it's going to cost us somewhere around $550,000 to run this entire system on behalf of all the governmental members. So we applied all of those rules that we talked about before in this long spreadsheet that Lisa could not fit on her printer, and divvied that up primarily based on how much stuff you have in the system. And again, you'll see that the county, because it has so much more infrastructure than anybody else, pays the lion's share of the operational cost. Hastings is proposed for about $14,000 or $15,000 based on our operational cost budget estimates at the present. The third column, again, I really ask for you to remember that it's only for demonstration purposes. But if we were able to realize $400,000 worth of rental on the CNET system county-wide, that there would be then revenue sharing, and Hastings would be in line for about $15,000 of it, using this example. The last column relates to that initial cost, initial incremental cost for the CNET, and that's $340,000. I keep giving you different numbers. I knew it was somewhere around $350,000, and you'll see that it is proposed for the CDA to finance that. Why should the council give serious consideration to this? We believe that there are benefits to having the INET in and of itself. If we never did anything more, we believe the INET holds some things that would be of value to you. It provides for a more robust, redundant plan system that would be made available to all the members. It would be a resilient and reliable service. There would be streamlining of the operations. Alan's life is going to get a lot simpler, I will tell you that. We heard a lot from the IT managers across the county that this is just not something that they are into. They've got headaches with their own internal networks within the buildings and so on. And when you go to an outdoor, or as I call it, outside plant, this is a whole different thing. And to be honest with you, most IT people are not geared for this. This is different technology, and it's really better if you have people who really specialize in this. That was one of the bullets there, that we would provide then specialized expertise for network engineers that are very versed in dealing with an outside plant. And we believe that this will in the end be cheaper because there will be economies of scale for things that need to be purchased, for services. Much of this stuff will be contracted, but we'll get better bids on locates, for example. Everybody who owns fiber is a Gopher State operator and has to have locating services. So we believe that there will be some savings of costs there. But as we talk to the cities, as Lisa and I and the Design 9 people talked to the cities, we found that they were more interested in potentially benefiting the businesses in the city. This would, for the first time, allow some gain for our businesses by leveraging expenditures that have already been made and paid for. For the first time, we'll try to get some good out of a public asset that's already been built. We believe it's going to allow the incumbent ISPs, the incumbent telecommunications companies, to do a better job of serving our businesses, because they may well be able to avoid capital costs that they would have otherwise had to incur. That's going to make it much more easy for them to provide service for our existing businesses and for recruiting new businesses. The third bullet talks about those 4 or 5, we hope, new ISPs that will be joining the system on day one. We believe that will increase some competition and reduce costs to all of our businesses, prospective businesses as well as existing businesses. This will be, I think, a real good story for our economic development folks to tell new potential businesses. That's a lot, and probably talk more than what we should have, but the story is, at this juncture, that we're at a bit of a crossroads, and the next steps will be for the cities, beginning with Hastings. You're the first ones out of the chute. We're visiting Apple Valley on Thursday night, and the other ones will follow along. For cities to think about this and decide whether or not you want to take the next step. And the next step will really be to sit down and work out a joint powers agreement for how we would operate this thing. And the joint powers agreement would then incorporate all of the various things that we've pounded our way through. So next steps would be for the cities and the county to make the decisions, and then once those partners have said, yes, we want to be in, we'll sit down and work our way through a joint powers agreement. So would be happy to entertain any comments or questions, and do the best.
Thank you, Craig, for that outstanding presentation. Appreciate that. And let's open that up for questions and council to Lisa or Craig. Council. Councilmember Lund.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Craig. So a good presentation, good information. It seems like a lot of it is focused around efficiencies, cost savings, and even revenue generation. Is there, for the CNET specifically, when we're positioning this for recruitment, as you state, is there anything aside from financial benefits to a company, to a business that would be looking at this? Is there less chance of interruption, or a quality aspect, or something that we could learn a little bit more about? Maybe not even tonight, but at some point. I think that probably carries a lot of weight as well.
Councilmember, Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Lund, we believe that our designers have come up with what, again, we call a carrier class, so that we should certainly be equal to what other ISPs are offering now, and hopefully better. We think that this is a pretty resilient system. It's well designed, and there is a lot of capacity in the system. So I would certainly hope that we would be the equal, and perhaps even a little bit better than what would be offered. And we do in our heart of hearts believe that there will be cost advantages too.
Councilmember Lund?
Just to follow up, I was just wondering if we could be provided some of that information, if you have, even if it's not incredibly detailed, just some idea of what, some specifics of what you're talking about at some point. Thank you.
Councilmember Brox.
Yes. I know this is probably an impossible question to answer, but what timeline are you expecting for the building out the INET? And I assume this is going to be in phases of some kind, INET and CNET. Will those be done in phases where the INET will be first and the CNET will be second? Will they be done simultaneously? What's the overall plan? I know you probably can't tell us exactly when it will be completed.
Mayor and Councilmember Brooks, we at one time thought that there would be more staging involved. And specifically, we said, well, let's get our feet on the ground with this INET business and then go ahead and work on the CNET. But when we got further into it, and it really dawned on us that we have two members that are already in the CNET business, we said, no, we need to do this concurrently. That is when the idea of the incremental CNET project was born, and that was when the idea of asking the CDA to get engaged and it came about. So they would be mobilized concurrently, and the timing will be totally dependent on how quickly we can gain consensus from the members. We hope that we would be in operation in 2018. Fiber optic cable goes in pretty quickly. A lot of this stuff can happen. We've got a lot of switches to install and a lot of machinery to get involved, but we still think that we could be operational in 2018 if the members want that to happen.
And if I could ask a follow-up question, what happens if the CDA isn't funding a large portion of the costs? Is there a backup plan for how that would be funded, or do we have an assumption that the CDA will likely cover some of the costs?
I want to be careful to not commit a CDA board before they've really had a chance to think about this, but we think that there's a reason to believe that they would favorably consider this. If they don't, we'll have to go back to the drawing board and come up with a cost sharing, we believe, for the members. And presumably it would be something similar to one of the other models that we've already established. When the timing issue became critical, and we thought about tackling another cost distribution thing, that's when we really said, gosh, this is totally economic development. Would the CDA consider this? The CDA does so much now through its RIG program. If you're familiar with that, I'm going to step outside here because Lisa can answer better. We had dreamed that perhaps this could be an application of RIG funds, which already, as you know, go to cities. I would say the CDA is mulling that over at the present. Would you, Lisa?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, Mayor and Councilmember Brooks, that is, as Craig mentioned, I can't speak for the board right now because we haven't talked about it. We're looking at probably talking about it in August or September, so I apologize that we haven't talked about that yet, because I know that that's a big part of this decision is what is the county doing and what is the CDA's involvement. But it has been the commitment of the CDA that we are the economic development authority for the county, and that the county has been very invested in doing county-wide economic development efforts. And I don't think you find anything more county-wide in an economic development effort than funding this CNET component. So I think we believe that they'll strongly be in favor of it, but we'll be discussing it in August or September.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Lisa and I have spent several update occasions with the county board, which of course is the CDA board as well. So they're very tuned to what's been going on. And they didn't shoot us at any of those meetings. So they may have wanted to, but so we'll see. As we were preparing for our presentation in Apple Valley later on this week, they said, well, maybe we should wait until the CDA and the county boards make their commitment. And of course, when we talk to the executive director at the CDA and the county manager, the county administrator, they say, maybe we should wait until we know for sure that the cities are on board here. So I think that there's probably going to be some going forward in good faith. And of course, no one is truly committed until you do the signing on the dotted line of the JPA.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it's just important for us to know what the costs are to Hastings, and that seems to be a big factor. So that's why I wanted to ask about that. And if that picture was going to change substantially, at least I would want to know about that before we agreed to the joint powers agreement, because that is a factor. So thank you for the information. I know it's not, we're still negotiating, but thank you.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor, and I agree with Councilmember Brox, because what if, it sounds like we're the first ones, so you go get to make some more presentations. What if somebody doesn't? I'm assuming the equations start to move when someone doesn't jump on board. I like your rainy day funds. I'm just using them here when you're putting these together, but My quick question would be is why wouldn't the CDA just do it themselves? Take all the revenue back yourselves, the potential revenue, as kind of an investment long-term in the county, so we don't have to put all the labor time into JPAs and all of our time trying to figure out what's fair, when we just say this is a good thing for Dakota County because we're partners as cities and counties together. Why would we, I'm assuming we've looked at that. It sounds like some other counties have already done that. Is that just a flavor that we're getting from the county board and the county CDA saying, let's get some buy-in from all the cities before we make that investment?
Mayor and Councilmember Vaughn, very good question. And I mean, it could go that way. I would say that that's not traditionally how things have been done in the county. And I offer up two examples: CGN, which I think you probably are familiar with, and the DCC. These are cooperative efforts, and we really started to grind away at this on the early days, because the county, although it has spent a significant amount of money, really balked at the idea of giving up their investment to another entity, and that's how we hit on the idea of everybody retaining ownership. Could it be done that way? It could. I will tell you that in the discussions that we've had so far, it doesn't seem to be favored by the county, probably understandably so, but perhaps even the other cities seem to not want to surrender the control. And of course, I think that JPAs are kind of a pain in the neck, to be honest with you, because I've been involved in a lot of them. But they are still under the control of the members. And I think that there's enough healthy respect for all of the various members to say that we're all going to hold each other accountable. And when something gets done only by the county, there's a surrendering of control. As it stands under this concept, there would be a JPA board that would operate this entire system. So certainly could be done. That hasn't been the concept so far.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a couple of clarifying questions. It's been a while since I've had to wrap my head around, broadband issues and such. And so I just wanted to start with the first question is, now this Egan data center, that isn't a supplemental site to the 511 site. That's actually a redundant business continuity site, right? It's meant for redundancy purposes?
Mayor and Councilmember Fulch, the data bank center, of course, is a for-profit business.
Right.
And it still provides hoteling service. Now, it's not in any way contractually related to the 511 building, but as it's evolved with the other connections that it offers south, it's provided a real level of redundancy for the big national companies.
Yeah, that's what I
So
thought.
it's not really related to the 511 building, but the fact that they provide similar functions, I happen to think regionally we're better off for it.
Yeah, and that was my understanding, because I had heard I was at a conference a few years ago, and they were talking about this coming down the road and how we're really actually, I just want to say that we're actually really positioned in a wonderful spot. I mean, it's a very unique opportunity for Dakota County to have this facility within it, and the capacity that it brings with it. And, and everything I've ever been to at professional conferences just goes to show how the need for broadband is only going to grow exponentially as we move from 4G to 5G, expectations for technology and such. And so, it's kind of like it's a for sure thing, right? We're only going to see more and more demand for internet service, cellular service, technology. It just kind of blows your mind when you start to think about it. Just where were we 15 years ago, to today, right? And it's like, where are we going to be 15 years from now? And so, and I think we're only moving forward, and I think it's an awesome opportunity for Hastings, to work on this together with the county and be a part of it. And so I think that it shows a lot of strategic visioning, for Dakota County and our communities, and it puts us in a wonderful position moving forward. And so it's great. And, I think whatever we can do to try to put this down to some basic terms, bring it down to layman's terms, because even as I was sitting here, I was trying to keep up, like, okay, I think I understand what you're saying. when you're talking about broadband, you know, the fiber and pulling that through and exactly how that works, it's a little difficult, you know, at first to start to try to, you know, wrap your head around it. Like, what do you mean when you say that? And so I would just also, so I understand that it's strategically moving forward. You know, we have to be thinking about these infrastructure to be put in place, and how fortunate we are to have this opportunity for us here in Dakota County versus other parts of, you know, the metro or greater Minnesota, where, you know, there's this desperate need for it, right? And so it puts us at an advantage for business development and such. And so anyhow, I just wanted to say I think that it's terrific, and I'm glad to see that the county is bringing this forward and coming to the cities, and thank you for coming and, you know, presenting this to us. And I would be interested in further support, you know, of this initiative moving forward, even if the city does have to put some dollars forward. I think it's money well invested, because we know, like I said, you know, it's like we're not going to go back to the dark ages as far as I can tell. We're only moving forward, raging ahead. So anyhow, thank you.
Councilmember, you brought up something that I probably should have too. When you talked about the emerging 5G, we get questions a lot of times about, well, when 5G comes, maybe we can do all this wirelessly and we won't need all these fiber optics. But as I said during the presentation, there will always be a wireless part of the system, and 5G is going to be, we think, certainly a real increment in advance. But all those cell towers and all those things have to have what the engineers call backhaul.
Right. Yeah.
And that backhaul absolutely has to come from fiber. So in some ways, the more cellular service, the more wireless service we have, the more demand there is for fiber optics. So, good point.
And I just wanted to say, Mayor, Councilmember, thank you very much for your comment about the basic terms. And I know it doesn't seem like it, but we've been trying to figure out how to kind of just get this down to the basic levels, because it's very complex. So I appreciate that feedback. And as Craig mentioned, you are our first stop, so that just is really helpful information, so that we can kind of keep fine-tuning the presentation just so we can make it as basic as possible, because it is very complex, a very complex topic. So.
Yep.
Okay.
I would just encourage you to use visuals. I always try to, you know, imagine like a pipe. Okay, well, what are we talking about with a pipe? Are we talking about you're actually you're giving the opportunity for a bunch of different carriers to run their fiber through that pipe, that physical pipe? Or is it that you're building the pipe, all of the wiring is in there, and then they lease components of that pipe from you? And that's what I thought you meant, but I hadn't really think about it. So,
Yeah, a lot of the pipes, as Councilmember refers to them, will have varying numbers. They could have 96 or 244 of the teeny tiny little strands that are in there. And one teeny tiny strand has immense capacity. And we don't know how much capacity, even because they're inventing new senders and receivers every day. They're splitting it on multiple light frames. So you may be riding the yellow light wavelength on the fiber, and you might be riding the blue or whatever. The technology is extremely interesting and changing and advancing every day. It's the nearest thing to being obsolescent proof, I think, as anything we've seen, because it has more capacity every day, even the existing fibers that are in the ground now. So.
Is there any other questions or comments? I'll just close by saying, first of all, thank you for being here. And I thought you did a very good job explaining a very complex issue. And well noted, Councilmember Fulch, and some of the comments that you made. You answered the question I was going to ask, and that was, we saw at the last legislative session, the League of Minnesota Cities and wireless companies getting involved in negotiations about the small nodes and putting them on city right of way. And that was going to be, okay, now we're going to go to 5G and the wireless, but I think you answered that by that's going to require more fiber optics, essentially, in the end, because you need those support systems for that. So I appreciate that clarification. Being part of the mayor's managers group, and I know, Craig, you're from that group from a ways back. This is one of the HIP issues that we talked about, so we go back a long ways on it. And I'm a very big proponent of this. I hope that by the end of 2018, we are engaged in this process, and we've built it by then. I wish we could get started yesterday. So I think this brings great value to our city, great value to Dakota County, and whenever we can get a leg up on technology, it's our gateway to the world here in Dakota County. And so I'm very supportive of your efforts, and I wish you well when you talk to our neighbors. And if you get out there and you find a couple of friends out there that say no, hopefully there'll be enough friends to say yes. So we would have a GPA a structure depending on how many yeses you get.
Yep.
And even if you don't get one more yes, you come back to us and talk to us.
Okay.
We'll still talk to you.
Okay. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, appreciate it. Council, we have item number 3 under administration. The Councilmember Fulch brought up the Leduc bids on the re-roofing contract. Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm sorry to sound, this is gonna sound kind of picky, I guess, but when I was looking at the bid requirements, and you know, we all love that Leduc, it's so beautiful, and we have all sat there in front of the building and seen how unique that structure is, the roof on it, and I don't remember what all of the details are, if it's Victorian or I can't remember, but it sure is lovely, isn't it? And then I was looking at the bid qualifications, and I was a little concerned about the bidders' qualifications being too low. It says that the only qualification is that the bidder must be properly licensed under the laws governing their respective trades and be able to obtain insurance and bonds required for their work. Then a performance bond and payment bond is required in insurance. And that's a very low threshold for this job. And so I would like to see staff take into consideration tightening up that requirement to include something that would say that the contractor must submit documentation showing at least 3 commercial roofing projects or historic properties or historic residents that are similar in nature within the last 5 years. Because I know that if you put this out for a bid like this, especially it being so late in the summer, that you have a good chance that you're not gonna get a quality contractor. It's kind of surprising. I would be surprised if really well-performing contractors would have availability between the late last part of the summer, early fall to be able to do this work. And so I would just like to make sure that we have a contractor that is more suitable to work on a historic building as such. So that was basically my concern, just that the bar was too low for the bidder qualifications on this.
John, were you involved in this bid situation? Or, I know Justin was.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, Justin was primarily involved in this more than I am, so I can answer some questions. Melanie may be able to answer a little bit more.
Is there a specific question, Your Honor?
Well, you know, we know that at the Leduc Mansion, there has to be a specific amount of work that needs to be done. I mean, we're dealing with a historic structure. It was last done in the mid-1980s when we got monies from the legislature to have it roofed. And I, you know, taking note your point, council member, these contractors, and I don't know this one specifically, but I have great confidence they know what they're getting into and the nature of the job. I guess I don't share your concern. The bids that went out are according to law and according to requirements. I mean, we could always add additional ones if you're suggesting in the future that we add that onto future contracts or bids of Leduc work. I'm not quite sure there's companies out there that say, you know, we do roofing historic homes only. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And once this roof was done in 1985, that job that was done then was put to the standards, I think that, so it could operate today under the current codes. So I don't know if it's as old as it, or as hard of a job as you might think it might be. Melanie?
Sure, Your Honor, if I may. We've been working with the Rita from McDonald and Mack. This has been probably 2 years in the works because of working with SHPO on the specifications for the roof materials. And there's 143 pages of specifications. I certainly can pass along Councilmember Fulch's comments about wanting a desired and qualified contractor. That would certainly be something we would be looking for. But I think the specifications are thorough, but we'll be happy to pass those comments along.
Councilmember Liefeld?
Thank you, Your Honor. I do have a question, not my area of expertise, won't pretend it is. Leave this up to you great people. But my question would be, when we hire someone as a city, it's just like if I hired someone at my home and the job itself wasn't done to the specifications necessary, what then happens? I mean, I wouldn't expect, my neighbor Joe, who shingled his house a handful of times and helped a buddy, bid on this. I'm not being sarcastic, I just don't, this is huge. This is a massive undertaking. I was looking at these pictures and I'm like, you could not pay me enough money to be on that roof.
240,000.
No, I wouldn't do it. But my question does come down to, I see the validity in what you're saying, Councilmember Fulch, in the fact that I'm agreeing with the mayor in the fact that I'm not concerned, but my question does come into, what if they mess it up? What happens? What if someone bid off more than they could chew? Right. So I'm just curious about that.
Sure, there are insurance and surety requirements that protect the city, and bonds that protect the city and the investment, the grant dollar investments.
Councilmember Fulch?
Your Honor, thank you. My concern is that when you make the qualifications that low, just that they are insurable and that they can get bonds, you can get any new startup company. And so typically, particularly since this is a historic building, when I professionally put out bids for projects like this, that I have required that they have to show that they have experience in working on a similar type of structure, just to ensure that, and that's where I'm going with it, is just that, so you don't get, I've put out projects myself that are complex in nature and had folks or contractors that have no experience in that type of building or the complexities of it and put in bids. And if you don't ask for a little bit higher qualifications, technically, legally, you have to take the low bid. And so that's why I'm pointing out that to ask for something a little higher. Yep.
Councilmember, it doesn't hurt to ask.
Right. Yeah.
So if you're suggesting, name projects of a similar nature,
Yep.
doesn't hurt to ask.
No.
Well, let's just put it in.
Okay.
It's not worth the, yeah. No, we'll put that in the bid.
Yeah, because I've seen it.
Doesn't hurt to ask.
Yep. Thanks.
Okay, all right. Okay, with that in mind, we'll need a motion to approve. Advertisement approved. With that in mind, Councilmember Fulch makes a motion to approve,
Yes,
second by
sir, thank you.
Councilmember Balsanic. Any further discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion prevails. Next, we have comments from the audience. Are there any comments from the audience? Gave up. Okay. Michelle, anything on your mind? Okay, all right. Seeing none, council announcements. Announcements, council. Any announcements? Okay, I have a few announcements. First of all, on Tuesday, July 11th, tomorrow night, the tour of the Great Rivers Landing redevelopment in the old Hudson building. We'll be meeting with a developer at the Confluence at 5:30 at the Hudson site. Is that correct? We'll be meeting at the Hudson site. The meeting is intended to allow Confluence Development to discuss changes to the parking ramp, landscape plan, and the proposed uses. So we're all going to get together tomorrow because we like each other so much. I can't wait until 5:30 tomorrow. And we'll have that discussion with Great Rivers Landing. On Thursday, July 13th, Hedgerow will be meeting at 6:30 here at Hastings City Hall. On Monday, the Planning Commission will meet at 7 p.m. at City Hall. And that's Monday, July 17th. On Tuesday, July 18th, the HPC will be meeting at 7 p.m. at City Hall. On Wednesday, July 19th, the City Council, the Planning Commission, and HEDRA will be holding a workshop with the Urban Land Institute, and it's titled Navigating Your Competitive Future. It will focus on current challenges of development and redevelopment from 6:30 to 8:30 at City Hall. So Wednesday, July 19th, 6:30 to 8:30, we'll all be getting together again for the workshop. On Monday, July 24th, the City Council will take a tour of the hydro plant at 5:45. Afterwards, at 7 p.m., that'll be the next City Council meeting, will be at 7 p.m. Again, that's Monday, July 24th. Hydro tour before that council meeting. On Wednesday, July 26th, the Finance Committee, chaired by Councilmember Vaughn with Balsanics and Brox, will be meeting at 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 to work on the 2018 budget. And appreciate their service on that. That's going to be a long day. So on Wednesday, July 26th. And then, everyone, Rivertown Days is coming up. I love Rivertown Days. Don't we all? It's a lot of fun. Rivertown Days is coming up. That'll be beginning on July 21st to July 23rd. I always get a chance every year, and hopefully you will, council members, stop by Machinery Hill, or we call it kind of the Machinery Downslope, underneath the bridge. We'll have our big pieces of equipment will be large trucks and, I don't know, back machines, whatever they call them, and the kids love it, and it's a great opportunity to see the public get to see what type of investments they've made to help their community run better, and especially in public works. And so big pieces of equipment will be there and learn how they work for the community, and so they'll be there. And I just want to remind you, council members, some of you, I sent out an email, and some of you may not have gotten it, but I sent out an email that we are involved in the parade. I'm waiting to hear back from the parade organizers where we are. We're typically between number 5 to 11 in the parade route, okay? And once I get that information, I will make sure you get that. We have, again this year, the 4 1956 convertibles. And so in one vehicle will be Ward 1 and 2, another vehicle will have Ward 3 and 4, and then the at-large members will be together, and then the mayor will be in a vehicle. I get to sit one all by myself. So that's just the way the numbers came out. So besides, I couldn't get any of you to sit with me anyway. So, so we'll have that parade will start at noon. We typically get together right around 11:15 a.m. for the parade where we organize and meet. So once I get that staging information from the Rivertown Parades Committee, I will let you know, okay? And we'll go from there. And we'd like to thank the Hastings Area Chamber of Commerce and Tourism Bureau for their work on coordinating Rivertown Days. We've been engaged with them. We've been partners and good partners with them, and it's going to be another great event this year. We have no other further business before us. Councilmember Balsanic, something came to your mind, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just feel that I would be remiss if I didn't let everybody know that the mayor just missed a hole-in-one Saturday morning by less than 16 inches out at Hidden Green.
It was a nice shot, wasn't it?
It was a beautiful shot.
Awfully lucky on my standard.
Yes. And I should point out that I think you're doing a very nice job of following in my footsteps.
Yeah. How many holes in ones do you have, Councilmember?
Oh, just 6.
6 of them. I haven't gotten one. So I just hope to get to 1.
Your Honor, I'd also like to make a similar comment. Mark, Councilmember Vaughn, also just missed a hole-in-one over the weekend by 3 strokes. So.
By 3 strokes. There we go. Well, I'm in good company. Well, thank you for that, Councilmember. We have no further items before the council. A motion to adjourn is in order. Councilmember Vaughn makes that motion to adjourn, second by Councilmember Brox. All those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.